All right, so I guess it's time for another rant here. Buckle up. So I've been seeing a bunch of clickbait, a bunch of BS over the past 24 hours about K cars are coming back to America. They're not. They're not coming back to America. And I'll lay out, I got like 4 bullet points here of the reasons why K cars cannot come back to America. It's not even remotely realistic. It's not commercially viable. It has no actual basis in reality. And I don't know why anyone's pretending like it does. So, just some backstory for those of you that maybe don't follow the news. Good for you if you don't, because it's crazy. But anyway, so yesterday Trump said that he just got back from Japan and saw these cute little cars, which I'm surprised he used that word. But anyway, cute little cars that were like the Beetle. He didn't even say K cars. He doesn't know what they are called. He just saw cute little cars running around Japan and said, hey, like that would be kind of a nice idea. Maybe we should have those here. He asked some unspecified people how they think the K cars would do in America. And whoever those people were, who clearly know nothing about the auto industry, or just were too afraid to say anything opposed to what Trump was already thinking, they said, oh, I think they would do good. He didn't even use proper grammar. They do good here. Okay, well, this sounds like something we should do. But Trump said that they're not allowed to build them here, so I've authorized the transportation secretary to immediately approve the production of those cars, so you'll be able to buy them. And then rambled about how good they look and how some of them are beautiful and stuff. Again, strange, but then looked back at Ford CEO Jim Farley and Sean Duffy, who were over his shoulder there, and said, I think you're going to do very well with those cars, so we're going to approve those cars. And then Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy added that they got the directive to clear the regulations on this, and that they've cleared the deck so they can make them in America and sell them in America. And that component is also very important for breaking down all this stuff. Now, the first thing I will say in response to this is that I love K cars. I love Japanese car culture. I would like nothing more than for K cars to be a realistic, viable option in America. I personally have a Fiat 500e, so I have kind of the closest thing you can get to a K car in America. That's how much I love them. I truly would love for this to actually be a thing. So the first thing to mention here is that nothing has changed yet. Now, this is just, talked about yesterday, so I don't expect anything to really change, but this isn't like, some order was already written and, the actual deck has been cleared. It has not been cleared, not yet. And that is also something that Sean Duffy can't just do on his own. So the Transportation Secretary does not have the power to do this himself. You'd need to rewrite crash test standards and basically make them a free-for-all, because K cars are not very safe vehicles. But, in the context of where they're surrounded by bicyclists, motorcycles, and other K cars, and, these cities in Asia and stuff, they're, safe enough, but you put them up against American gigantic vehicles, they're death traps, plain and simple. And I commend the few brave souls that drive them around the roads of America here with the used ones. It's a fun idea, and, again, in certain instances could make sense, but absolutely not commercially viable for regular commuters, for people. And also, if they did want to rewrite those crash test standards to be a free-for-all and car companies make death traps again, that is something that Sean Duffy can't do. That is a actual law and legislation that would require Congress to pass a bill to undo crash test standards. So that would be a Congress thing, and we know how those things go. So even if, they, were just saying, hey, let's clear the deck for this, and even if they do actually go forward with all this stuff, and this isn't just some fun idea, it's still going to have a lot of hurdles, and that's before we get to, again, the OEM side, which I'll touch on in a second here. So, it's not going to actually work out that way. Now, second, we had small cars about a decade ago. And I mean, many of you probably remember, there's a whole bunch of them, and some of us were sad when some of them went away. But the reason why a lot of them went away is that they weren't profitable enough. Whenever you can just churn out more F-150s and make 10 grand a truck, why would you bother trying to squeeze out, a $1,000 margin on a tiny little Mitsubishi Mirage? And that's, why, like, Mitsubishi Mirage, for example, is not here anymore. The last standing subcompact car we have in America is the Nissan Versa, and there's rumors that that's even going away soon. Even, subcompact crossovers are, still even kind of slowly going away too, as, people just want bigger and bigger vehicles here. And The market has just shown in America, people do not want small cars, especially because you get to a point with subcompacts where they're not that much cheaper. I think this is kind of the problem with Nissan Versa right now. Versa's what, like 20-ish grand or something for maybe a base one. You can get a Chevy Trax for low 20s. I think they still start around like 22,500 or so, which is way more practical, has a huge trunk, has a huge back seat. There's no world where anyone would choose a tiny, cramped little K car that isn't safe compared to a nice, big, comfy Chevy Trax, which has all the modern tech, all the modern space, all the modern safety features. It's going to take more than K cars to get affordability lower on this stuff. And it's just not, buyers don't want it. And I mean, that's been the whole thing with this administration is, let's make cars that buyers want. And that's been the whole justification for trying to deregulate or disincentivize the EVs and deregulate emissions and all this other stuff. So if you're worried about what people actually want, the market has clearly shown people do not want tiny cars, at least not in large enough numbers. And so, that's why, all the car companies quit trying here. They still sell tiny little cars everywhere else in the world, but they just know that we don't want them. And, you're going to have a gigantic culture shift to get people on board with that. And I don't think it's going to happen, especially the way things are going now. So I think it's dead in the water for that reason. Even if people did want K cars in commercially viable numbers and, all of America said, this is a great idea, let's all run out and buy a tiny little, K car, that still wouldn't help them to come here because, again, Sean Duffy said, we're going to clear the path so they can be built here. So that, gives us the same restrictions and the same hurdles and unrealistic demands that we had with the tariffs. So like any of this other stuff, you want to build something in America, great. But for cars, it takes a while to set up not only the factory, you don't throw up a factory like you throw up a ready-made house. It takes years to build factories. I mean, that Scout factory is still, I think, not even coming online till next year. And they announced that several years ago. They broke ground. I mean, it's taking a long time. That's the way it goes with factories. Not to mention setting up supply chains. All the suppliers for K cars, all that stuff is in Japan too. And with tariffs, you can guarantee they're not going to want to bring all those parts in and then assemble them here. That's going to be a whole thing too. So you're going to have to reroute the whole supply chain, set that up. That takes years. So that's kind of the big holdup with all this stuff is, okay, even if car companies got started yesterday, they said, all right, this is a great idea. Everyone wants K cars. We're going to make a bunch of money on them. Let's do it. This is a great idea. It would be years. And by the time they actually were starting to come out of factories here in America in this hypothetical, by that point, Trump is going to be out of office and someone else could just flip the rules back and say, hey, maybe this isn't a good idea. And it's a gigantic risk for a car company to take. Car companies, as they have said over and over again, and no one listens. Car companies say, we do not engineer cars. We don't, dictate our whole product planning on an administration. Usually you're planning for stuff 5 years out. That spans beyond an administration. You're looking way far beyond what's happening in the next 4 years or less. And so, you can't expect car companies to pivot. They physically cannot pivot quick enough to, say, hey, yeah, sure, we'll build K cars tomorrow. Like it doesn't work that way. And I don't think you have to have a big brain to put this together. And it's crazy to me that none of these red flags ever raise alarm with any of these people that propose these ideas or any of these people out there. I mean, even some people I've respected some of their opinions in the past who are talking about this like this is actually something that can happen. Anyone that's in this industry knows this can't happen, not by a long shot. And I mean, some even said, oh, well, maybe we'll just drop the 25-year rule and then we'll just have a free-for-all with, the imports just coming in, which, again, they were talking about building them new. That's what the administration wants. Bringing in a bunch of cheap used cars would certainly help affordability, but that would hurt dealers big time, hurt manufacturing here in America of new cars, because then you'd have a way more used cars to pick from, and used car prices would drop so much if they were able to just bring in a ton of this stuff that it would make way more sense to just go buy a used thing because they're all super cheap, and that would kill dealers. And also getting rid of that rule would take away a lot of the dealers' power to be the middleman between, manufacturers and consumers, that's, forcing consumers to, not buy direct, and car companies are trying to find ways to, get around dealers because they hate having dealers in their way. But, the dealers are still, strong arming the manufacturers and being this middleman. And a lot of that power comes from all these regulations that are tangled up and all this, stuff we have with these import bans and stuff. This is why, the chicken tax thing has been great for American manufacturing, because it gave, the American companies free rein to just churn out whatever they want, because there was really no other options, and once they cemented that lead, others have tried to challenge it, but even the giants such as the Toyota Tundra still sell a fraction of what the Americans do. And it's all thanks to all this legislation over decades and decades that has given power to these car companies and to these dealers. And so anyway, that's my whole tale. It's just, it just blows my mind when people are treating this like actual realistic news. I know the president said it, but come on guys, like, let's have a reality check here. Let's actually, if any of these 4 hurdles that I laid out here would be easy things to to go around or to, hurdle over, great. But like, we have 4 giant roadblocks here that are immovable, and it's not happening. And anyone who tells you otherwise is cashing in on the hype, is cashing in on, people just not thinking this through apparently, and being like, oh, cool, K cars, sounds good. And like, just taking it at face value. You gotta stop and think. You gotta have some critical thinking here. And it's just like, it's crazy to me. So anyway, I will just reiterate, please be careful where you get your news from, who you listen to, who you believe. There's a lot of people out there just trying to get the clicks and just trying to, tell people what they want to hear. This is something that a lot of people would love to hear. I'd love it to be a reality. But, I also would, love a whole bunch of other fantasy car stuff that's never going to happen. And I'm not going to act like it's an actual possibility just to make a clickbait video. Like, let's stay in reality here and deal with with the realities that we have to deal with here. So anyway, you can count on me to always cut through the BS, give it to you guys straight, and not lie to you or clickbait you. I hope that, you guys appreciate that, and let me know your thoughts on all this stuff in the comments below. Thank you for listening to my rant. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.